Hi, I'm Michelle Kennedy, and this is Real Quick, a short cast, that's what I've decided to call it, devoted to an essay every few days. I'd love to say every day, but I just can't always quite get there. Sometimes I write and read my own essays, and sometimes I read essays written by others. I hope to soon have other writers who would like to read their own essays on the show and chat about them with me a bit after. I am a huge fan of essays of all sorts, and truthfully, I get tired of literary essays and highfalutin journals being the only ones I hear about. I think the essay is a truly underrated art form. It takes research, thought, processing, synthesizing, and more research to bring about a truly great essay. Others just take some thought. Either way, the pondering of an idea out loud in writing so that others might ponder that idea has always been fascinating to me. The first essays I read, way back when I was a kid, were found in books like the Norton Anthology and collections of essays my father had lying around the house. My father was a voracious reader and frequently left books out and stocked our bookshelves with great authors. I started to seek out essays by my favorite authors like Hemingway, Atwood, and eventually David Sedaris and Sarah Vowell. Masters of the essay they are. I found some of my first success as an author in essay form, and the inspiration for my very first book was the result of my first successful essay published at salon.com. As a writer, I have had some great successes and the chance to read my essays on NPR and even local radio. Dorothy Parker is one of my great inspirations, and I often feel, as she did, that I often hate writing, but I love having written. I love to write, and I hate it sometimes. I'm compelled to do it always, whether or not anyone ever reads it or hears it. I also love to read. I loved to read first. In reading, I found my voice, and in one of my marriages, it was silenced again. I had to rediscover my love for reading, my love for writing, and my own voice. I hope you'll join us in discovering all sorts of writing, real quick. Well, hello again. After a 2-ish month hiatus, I have decided to start recording real quick again. I hope for a longer time this time. I am coming back to it after a fairly tumultuous summer. We have had a lot of transitions, a lot of things happen here. And so it's been very interesting, but it has not left a lot of room for other projects. My son, Liam, was very sick for a long time. We didn't know what it was. So we didn't know if it was like a tick-borne illness or a mosquito-borne illness. It was all very fearful, and he ended up in the hospital, and he is well now. So he is back to work. And so that's one great thing that's been happening. And then my grandson came to live with us. He is 6, so having 6-year-old energy in the house is super new and super fresh again and awesome, but also very exhausting. And we had to get back into school routines and all of that stuff. So that has been very, very interesting as well. In addition, we had a member of our family who was not actually a technical member of the family, but it was a gentleman we took care of for a long time. He transitioned out into another housing situation. He was here for a long time. And so now we have like all this space that we didn't have before. And it's now being used. And so like my son who was sick is now moving into that space, and it's an apartment. It's his first apartment. And at the same time, my other son, Jack, who is 19, is also moving out, and he's becoming a police officer. I have a daughter who's turning 17, which is just like crazy to me right now. The fact that I could have all these kids who are so little. And if you don't know anything about me at all, I have 8 children. My oldest is 32. His son is the one that lives with us. I have a range from 11 to 32 in ages. So I have like the first 4 children, and then I have the final 4 children. So now the final 4, which are the littles in my head, are starting to grow up. And so it's neat that we kind of have this new, younger energy again, and we get to do some of these things still. But at the same time, it's kind of not what I planned. So now we have this to do. And yeah, so very, very interesting times here. Very, very much why I wasn't recording. And today, we are reading the essay from Virginia Woolf called Death of a Moth. Death of a Moth is a quintessential little scene in time where the moth is just in the room and faces its own mortality. And it happens in just that split second almost that it takes to read the essay. And it's super poignant for me. It's kind of a fall essay. The beginning of fall, one of my favorite seasons. So as I'm kind of embracing the foliage and living here in Vermont and feeling very pumpkin spicy, this essay really brings out that feeling for me. I hope you enjoy it. And if you want to contribute an essay, or if you want to talk to us, or you have something you'd like to record and read, get in touch with me. My website is mishkennedy.com, and you are welcome to contact me through there, through Facebook, through Instagram, however you can get a hold of me. I'm on all the, main things. Enjoy Virginia Woolf. I always do, and we'll see you tomorrow. Moths that fly by day are not properly to be called moths. They do not excite that pleasant sense of dark autumn nights and ivy blossom, which the commonest yellow underwing asleep in the shadow of the curtain never fails to rouse in us. They are hybrid creatures, neither gay like butterflies nor somber like their own species. Nevertheless, the present specimen, with his narrow hay-colored wings, fringed with a tassel of the same color, seemed to be content with life. It was a pleasant morning, mid-September, mild, benignant, yet with a keener breath than that of the summer months. The plough was already scoring the field opposite the window, and where the share had been, the earth was pressed flat and gleamed with moisture. Such vigor came rolling in from the fields and the down beyond that it was difficult to keep the eyes strictly turned upon the book. The rooks, too, were keeping one of their annual festivities, soaring round the tree-tops until it looked as if a vast net with thousands of black knots in it had been cast up into the air, which after a few moments sank slowly down upon the trees until every twig seemed to have a knot at the end of it. Then suddenly the net would be thrown into the air again, in a wider circle this time, with the utmost clamor and vociferation, as though to be thrown into the air and settle slowly down upon the treetops were a tremendously exciting experience. The same energy which inspired the rooks, the ploughmen, the horses, and even, it seemed, the lean, bare-backed downs, sent the moth fluttering from side to side of his square of the window pane. One could not help watching him. One was, indeed, conscious of a queer feeling of pity for him. The possibilities of pleasure seemed that morning so enormous and so various that to have only a moth's part in life, and a day moth's at that, appeared a hard fate. And his zest in enjoying his meager opportunities to the full, pathetic. He flew vigorously to one corner of his compartment, and after waiting there a second, flew across to the other. What remained for him but to fly to a third corner and then to a fourth? That was all he could do in spite of the size of the downs, the width of the sky, the far-off smoke of houses, and the romantic voice now and then of a steamer out at sea. What he could do, he did. Watching him, it seemed as if a fiber, very thin but pure, of the enormous energy of the world had been thrust into his frail and diminutive body. As often as he crossed the pane, I could fancy that a thread of vital light became visible. He was little or nothing but life. Yet, because he was so small and so simple, a form of the energy that was rolling in at the open window and driving its way through so many narrow and intricate corridors in my own brain and in those of other human beings, there was something marvelous as well as pathetic about him. It was as if someone had taken a tiny bead of pure life and, decking it as lightly as possible with down and feathers, had set it dancing and zigzagging to show us the true nature of life. Thus displayed, one could not get over the strangeness of it. One is apt to forget all about life, seeing it humped, embossed, and garnished and cumbered so that it has to move with the greatest circumspection and dignity. Again, the thought of all that life might have been had he been born in any other shape caused one to view his simple activities with a kind of pity. After a time, tired by his dancing apparently, he settled on the window ledge in the sun, and the queer spectacle being at an end, I forgot about him. Then looking up, my eye was caught by him. He was trying to resume his dancing, but seemed either so stiff or so awkward that he could only flutter to the bottom of the window pane, and when he tried to fly across it, he failed. Being intent on other matters, I watched these futile attempts for a time without thinking, unconsciously waiting for him to resume his flight, as one waits for a machine that is stopped momentarily to start again, without considering the reason of its failure. After perhaps a 7th attempt, he slipped from the wooden ledge and fell, fluttering his wings onto his back on the window sill. The helplessness of his attitude roused me. It flashed upon me that he was in difficulties. He could no longer raise himself. His legs struggled vainly, but as I stretched out a pencil, meaning to help him to right himself, it came over me that the failure and awkwardness were the approach of death. I laid the pencil down again. The legs agitated themselves once more. I looked as if for the enemy against which he struggled. I looked out of doors. What had happened there? Presumably it was midday, and work in the fields had stopped. Stillness and quiet had replaced the previous animation. The birds had taken themselves off to feed in the brooks. The horses stood still. Yet the power was there all the same, massed, outside, indifferent, impersonal, not attending to anything in particular. Somehow, it was opposed to the little hay-colored moth. It was useless to try to do anything. One could only watch the extraordinary efforts made by those tiny legs against an oncoming doom which could, had it chosen, have submerged an entire city, not merely a city, but masses of human beings. Nothing, I knew, had any chance against death. Nevertheless, after a pause of exhaustion, the legs fluttered again. It was superb, this last protest, and so frantic that he succeeded at last in righting himself. One's sympathies, of course, were all on the side of life. Also, when there was nobody to care or to know, this gigantic effort on the part of an insignificant little moth against a power of such magnitude to retain what no one else valued or desired to keep moved one strangely. Again, somehow, one saw life, a pure bead. I lifted the pencil again, useless though I knew it to be, but even as I did so, the unmistakable tokens of death showed themselves. The body relaxed and instantly grew stiff. The struggle was over. The insignificant little creature now knew death. As I looked at the dead moth, this minute wayside triumph of so great a force over so mean an antagonist filled me with wonder. Just as life had been strange a few minutes before, so death was now as strange. The moth, having righted himself, now lay most decently and uncomplainingly composed. Oh yes, he seemed to say, death is stronger than I am. Thank you for joining me today for another essay. If you would like to contribute a comment, a question, or an essay of your own, please visit me at mishkennedy.com. I would love to hear from you. I hope you enjoy this beautiful day, wherever and whenever you are. As my dad always said, aside from if I get up out of this chair and you may be a pain, but you're not a window, if you wake up on the right side of the dirt, you still have a shot at a good day. So there's still a shot. Take it.